Hey, you might be familiar with some what we would call rope sayings, some rope sayings. So something like we got to learn the ropes. You know, if you're in a new job, sometimes it's the idea you got to learn the ropes. We see in the picture in the background, when you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. That's a great American, strongman saying, but we're going to see this morning that that's not really how it works. Give him enough rope and he'll hang himself, that's one of those things. Again, this is not a good line if you are a boxer. He's on the ropes. Again, this is the time of year when there's a lot of wedding anniversaries. There's a lot of marriages going on, and you might hear someone say, he got roped in. He got roped in. Again, not a real nice way to say it, but and then again, as I was doing some research for this, I went on YouTube, and you can put in rope tricks, and you get all kinds of hits, rope tricks. There's magic tricks that some musicians do. But this morning, as we think about this rope on Father's Day, you're about to not like this message, but I want this message to be something that hopefully will speak to some of us in this room. Maybe a lot of us in this room. You're going to see in this message that as hard as it might be to hear how we're going to use this rope, that there's still some beauty to this teaching. There's a goodness to this teaching, and there's a truth to this teaching that none of us in this room can get away from. Again, we're all people that are working hard. And we want to see our lives work. We want to worship this God that God has, as He speaks to us, as He calls to us, as we sing to Him, as we worship. So this morning, this is going to be a money rope. A money rope. And as we start thinking about this idea of a money rope, I want us to realize that our Father's hand holds every money rope. There is not a money rope in this room that our Father's hand does not hold, and He wants to hold it. Again, our Father is all about giving us good gifts. Our Father places our money rope in our hands. Whatever our money rope is, whatever size it is, our Father has placed it in our hands. You've been able to work hard and get a lot of money, and it's from so many graces and gifts of the Father. If you've worked really, really hard and you just haven't been able to hold on to as much money as maybe you would like to, you're still in the Father's hand. So here's the question as we think about this money rope. God's hand is holding us. Where's your hand? Where's your hand? And then as we think about where's your hand, this idea is how open is your hand? We're going to talk about this idea of our open hands being very close to God's hand holding us. But we're also going to talk about this idea of how close is your hand. And there's a part that, again, we're going to see that there's different times and different ways that our hands can be closed, and it's our money. We're trying to handle and manage our money rope. And there's times that we're still trying to handle our money rope, but we want to be open hands. And so our hands will go kind of sometimes open, sometimes closed. Our money rope that is in our hands and your hands, your money rope in your hands. Whether you're an adult, whether you're still a teenager and watching your parents use their money rope, some of the lessons that you're going to learn from them. Jesus speaks some amazing words about this idea of our money rope. We're going to read from Matthew chapter 6 and what Jesus says to this. So in Matthew 6, Jesus says, watch out. Don't do your good deeds publicly. Again, there's this idea that we're going to do these good deeds publicly, that it looks like, my hands are open. I'm going to give to the Father, but really it's kind of closed hand giving. To be admired by others, for you will lose the reward from your Father in heaven. When you give to someone in need, don't do as the hypocrites do, blowing trumpets in the synagogues and streets to call attention to their acts of charity. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And they're not looking at God. So I tell you the truth, they have received all the reward they will ever get from the praise of men. But when you give to someone in need, don't let your left hand, I'm going to switch for a minute there, your left hand know what your right hand is doing. They're just supposed to trust the Father as you would give with your open hand. Give your gifts in private, and your Father who sees everything well reward you as you give with an open hand. So that's what our God is inviting us to do. We're going to talk about this idea that how can we do open hand kingdom giving? Open hand kingdom expanding. Not my little kingdom, because whenever I did it, but open hand kingdom giving. Again, we say it around here over and over again, this idea that God's kingdom is ever warmly expanding in us and through us, all around us and way, way beyond us. But even as that is happening, we know that there is a lot of people that are doing a lot of closed hand keeping. It's just kind of the way, the majority of people that we see and maybe watch, we just know that they're doing a lot of closed. And there's just something about that as they're doing it all, and they're nice people like we are, we do the same thing. We just start doing what we might call closed hand keeping. And here's a hard truth, but we know that it's truth, that closed hand keeping leads to closed hand shrinking. It just does. It just does. Jesus tells a parable, and we're going to look at it as a massive money rope parable. I mean, this guy that we're going to read about, he just had a lot of massive money rope. And here's what Jesus says in this parable. He told them a parable saying, the land of a rich man. Man, he had a big old money rope. He was already rich. It produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain in my goods. And then I will say to myself, I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night, your soul is required of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So we see this rich man that he takes his rope, and some of you can probably feel this, that he just started getting all twisted up, and all the money he had, and it was all about him, and it was just his money, and he just kept shrinking, and it was all wound up, and he just thought he could do it because he saw other rich men do it. Saw people that weren't as rich as him, and maybe even saw a lot of suffering people, as we always see suffering people, and he just made it about him. And when we get to the end of this parable, and if you would ask yourself this question, what ended up in the rich fool's hand? And it was nothing. There was nothing in his hand, although he had a massive money rope during his time here. So like the person in the parable, again, we may not have a massive money rope and we may not have ourselves all twisted, but all of us share one thing in common with him and with everybody else. We all have an incoming. All of us have an incoming. And if we live by just doing close hand keeping, well, in the end, God lets go. It breaks his heart as a father, because he was the one that placed the money rope in our hands and said, use the money rope wisely. Keep some to yourself, but give. But for those that are held by God and they practice more of this open hand giving, when their end comes, well, God just keeps expanding. There's something about God's economy that is just so different from this earthly economy that we think is the only economy that really is real and exists. But the truth of God and the truth of the Bible is that there's just this open hand kingdom expanding, going all around us time and time again. So I want to look at two Bible verses. There's the same Bible verse, and they're in the book of Proverbs. And they're kind of haunting Bible teaching, especially for all of us who are in this room and for everyone not in this room this morning. There's this verse in Proverbs, and it's just one of these verses that I've known for years, and when I think about it, I just have to see if I'm living in a humble way, if I'm listening to God, because there is a way that seems right to a man, but sin is always the way of death. So for all of us in this room, there's a way that seems right to us, and we're watching people that are doing this, kind of taking it, and it's their money, they're working hard for it, they're living the American dream, and it just seems right. And some of them, they go to church, and they give a little open hand, but if you really look at them, they're far from 10%. They've been far from 10% for years and years and years. But every once in a while, they'll throw in $5, and I'm doing a little, but most of it is, and it seems right because there's so many people around that are doing the very same thing. But the end of it always is going to get twisted up, and it's got to end in shrinking and death. There is no person that is ever remembered for what they kept. The people that we remember are always the people that somehow lived with that open-handed generosity. And they could have kept it. They could have kept it. They could have kept it like so many others, but they just couldn't keep it. They wanted to see their hearts expand, and they wanted to see the kingdom of God expand. So as we're following Jesus, as we're trying to follow Jesus, we see Jesus always living with an open hand. There is never a time in any of the Gospels where he is living with a closed hand, keeping something away from us that can improve our lives. Jesus is always living with an open hand. There's just a beauty and a goodness and a truth about Jesus as he shows us how we can follow him, how we can follow the Father, how the Spirit can grace us with an open hand, how the Spirit can forgive us when we sometimes are living with too much of a closed hand, and he'll invite us. And again, always when we're living like this and we want to move from here to here, there's just it's just going to feel not right for a while. But the more you start doing this, well, there'll be a beauty, a goodness, and a truth that will come to your life that you just know, I can't earn it. I don't deserve it. But the overwhelming, reckless love of God. So Jesus teaches us another lesson with this. So Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy. Again, everything that's on earth, everything that we're trying to keep in that, moth and rust is going to destroy. Where thieves can break in and steal and take more from us. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust, nor moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. In our Father's hands, there's no moth, there's no rust, there's no thieves that are going to break in. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your heart can be here. Your heart can be here. Or your heart can be here. There's a lot of hearts all around you. There's probably always going to be more hearts over here than there will ever be over here. But there's just not a good end here. No matter how many hearts are over here. So, where's your treasure? With your massive money rope, but again, probably none of us feel like we have a massive money rope, but as Americans, we all have a massive money rope, even though we don't feel like it. So where's your heart? Can you start practicing and seeing if maybe your heart might be over here and see if God might expand your heart more than you think is possible? So, where's your hand? You got to answer this for yourself. I can't answer it for you. Again, there's a lot going on through all of your minds this morning. Man, this is a hard teaching. This is a teaching that is not making me comfortable on this Father's Day. Why is he talking about this on Father's Day? Why is he talking about this on Father's Day when there's some guests here? They'll never come back. But yet y'all know, whether you've been here for many, many times or the first time, there's a truth there as you answer this question. So where's your hand? How closed is your hand? How open is your hand? Goes back and forth, goes back and forth, goes back and forth. As we're following Jesus, we follow a Savior who has open hands. And he's always expanding. I mean, that's what we were singing about today with this idea of his reckless love. And Jesus, as we're following him, if we're following him, he's always got open hands. And he's inviting us to come to him and to trust him with just what we can hold on for a little while. You will never be able to hold on to what you have now for eternity. And there is a wonder that we can follow Jesus not with having to give all of our money rope away, no matter what size it is. He says our heart can be open and our hands can be open, giving 10%. And sometimes we'll hear stories of people that their hearts and hands are so open and they give more than 10%. Oftentimes, some of the times those people are multimillionaires. And again, if they can give away 90%, they're still living on 10%. That's much more than we'll ever be able to live on. But it's an awesome story because they don't have to give it away, but they do. And it's like, oh my goodness. I find those stories inspiring. But it's not going to be my story. It's their story. They have a God story. I have a God story. You have a God story. How can we follow this Jesus? His warm, open, ever-expanding hands. So, let me finish. What's your money rope dream? What's your money rope dream? I have a money rope dream that my hand will always be open and my heart will always be expanding. Still have to fight some of the same things that you do, this, and then, But God keeps holding me in his hand. And he forgives, he forgives, he forgives, he forgives, but he invites, he invites, he invites, and he invites. But the end of our rope is coming for all of us. And we will not be able to tie a knot in the end of it and hang on when that last breath comes. And we won't want to, because our hand and our heart has practiced being open. Let's pray. So gracious Jesus, the wonder of who you are, the beauty of who you are, the goodness of who you are, you want us to experience and enjoy good things in this life. And your hand is so open for that to happen. But you want so much more than just some of the temporary good things that we can enjoy, especially as we're here in these summer months. So Jesus, will you do something in each heart here this morning, whatever step it might be. Maybe it's for someone to take a step from 1% to 2%. Maybe it's for someone to say, okay, enough. I've got to redo how I use money, and it's just 10%. Man, it's going to be a struggle. My wife and I, we may not agree, but help us, Jesus, help us to work through this. So I want my hand open. I want my heart open. So Jesus, help us to dream more about you. We ask and pray it in your name.